Hey, 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 hey.
Hey everybody, back. It's been about 5 weeks since I did my last show. Had a lot of stuff going on, so I'm doing the best I can. But I want to kind of take the show in a little bit of a new direction now because I'm trying to take Crossing Corpses up to the next level, and I'm hoping that uh, not asking anybody for money or anything like that. What I'm hoping is that you can help get the word out about Crossing Corpses, which is a zombie thriller for people of a more right-leaning personality. We don't have big girl boss deals, and I mean, we do have strong female characters, but it's done fairly, I think. And yes, I took it to the level of science fiction because there isn't enough Christian representation in science fiction. So if you like a few characters that actually believe in God and use their moral compass to act accordingly, good or bad, some people misinterpret in your opinion, or my opinion, or, I just put it out there into the characters and I let you make the decision. But anyway, I want to turn Crossing Corpses into an IP that's sellable, something that I can sell off to a movie company or, anything, any place else that I can unload this and try and get something like that out into the atmosphere. I've tried to endorse other Christian creators. Most of them don't want to have anything to do with me for whatever reason, maybe because I'm a little bit political as well, which is fine. I don't care. But I'm trying to open up the genre now. We're living in an age where they have made and remade the crap out of everything. All right. And it's all become completely boring to watch anymore because we know the character. Oh, look at this interpretation. Oh, look, now they're gay. Oh, look, now they're, a different color or a different race or a different culture. Okay, fine. You want to keep doing that? Knock yourself out. But as you can see, the returns aren't coming back the way that they used to for that type of thing. And you can see that in Spider-Man. And this is where I want to get to tonight. All right. I'm really, really getting fed up with the critic channels that I used to rely on as objective critics of film. And what they're becoming now is they're soft soaping where they came from. This seems to happen all the time. Everyone always starts out, far to the right, unmovable in their positions, whatever it may be. And I'm not saying all these people are far to the right. I mean, some of them are a little bit right, some of them are a little more right, and so on. But what I'm saying is that their positions on films were they wanted the type of films that we enjoyed for decades before they turned this thing into one huge industry of douchebaggery. Okay. And now what they're doing is I originally I thought, okay, well, what it is they're so desperate for a good movie that they'll endorse the heck out of this movie and endorse, like, I'll give you a good example, The Thunderbolts. All right. Everyone's saying what a great movie that was. It sucked. It absolutely sucked. It diminished characters. I mean, it way overused the whole uterus joke thing. I mean, it was like it was lame. It was slow moving. It had some good action sequences in it, but it was not a good film. It may have been somewhat satisfying, but like it's satisfying in the way that if you crave a five-star meal and you end up going to McDonald's. Okay, that's the kind of thing, you know, that I got out of Thunderbolts. But anyway, I want to review a couple of them that were just such egregious. I mean, gave me a headache almost. It's the geeks, the nerds, and the drunks. Okay, all of them seem to be following the same pattern, and I give props to certain people like Little Platoon, I believe. He's a guy from the UK. Um, Not that I care, but he puts it out there commonly that he's gay. Um, but at least when he does a movie review, whether I agree with him or not, I know he's coming from an objective place. All right. He's actually looking at the movie and not trying to judge it based on his dogma or their dogma or dogma he likes versus dogma he doesn't like. He's judging the movie itself, Another one is Clownfish TV. I would watch them way before I'd watch any of the other ones because, again, I disagree with them probably about 40, 50% of the time on their reviews of certain things, but I know their reviews are honest and they're coming from the heart and not some, other ulterior motive place. Now, what I'm starting to wonder what the geeks and the nerds are, have they just plain out softened? Is there Are they trying to open their audiences now to like, people that lean more towards douchebaggery in film? And I'm going to get to that right now. The one film, and I wanted to review this when it came out, and I just didn't have time. But the one film that like where we really, really got a part company is He-Man or well, the Masters of the Universe is the film. Okay, this film to me is just like I cannot believe that all these people said it was good. I mean, listen, if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. It's your personal taste. That's fine. Okay. I'm not going to say it wasn't, you know, uh, watchable. Sure, it was. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's the worst movie ever made. No. But the things that they loved about this movie, or well, they love this movie, and yet it has so many things that they complain about in other movies. And it's starting to make their reviews and their beliefs on things very inconsistent. It seems like, they've taken wanting good entertainment down to did we see boobies and, was there good action sequences, you know? But anyway, let's start with Masters of the Universe. Okay, it opens up. And it's the only time in the movie we get to see Orko, at least that I can remember, and I've watched it a couple of times. Um, and I mean, first off, it's a terrible 3D rendering. It looks like he's in some kind of jelly world and he's made of some kind of jelly. It looked like something, out of Candy Crush or something. And, he gives you this very brief exposition about, Eternia, Eternos, and the coming of He-Man, yada, yada, yada. All right, that poofs away, right? So, young Adam is played by Artie Wilkerson Hunt. And I want to say, first off, everyone in this movie did their job as far as acting performances go. I'm not going to knock anybody's acting in the movie. Um, what I will say is that they just were not given a good script to go with. All right, and we'll get back to that in a bit. But anyway, it begins in the Eternos, which is Adam's, He-Man's home city, and where they rule from, and I guess it's some kind of a city state because we get no world building in this at all. We have no, it's just a generic world in the whole movie. There's no sense of culture or anything else until we get to the end, and there's a little bit of a sense of culture, and there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that too. But anyway, so young Adam, Artie Wilkerson Hunt did a fine job. He's a really brilliant actor. I hope to see him in more things. But he's a cliche, clumsy, low aptitude klutz when it comes to fighting skills, you know. And then, bring in Man at Arms, played by Idris Elba, who I absolutely love. Stringer Bell forever, man. One of the best acting jobs ever, Stringer Bell. And I also enjoyed Luther. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So Man at Arms is more than just a character in this, and I'm not going to get into the pettiness of race swap and all that other stuff. Look, they did what they did. This is their adaptation, so to speak. Okay, so to me, that didn't mean anything. But what did mean something was that he was the symbolic figure of the old days, of how things were done back then, of why the children that he's teaching now live free lives. Okay, now keep that in mind because symbolism is huge in this movie. And the critics, didn't have time to really, delve into this. Apparently. It was just a really good movie. It was exciting. One of them said, it has the power. Oh, man, my head almost exploded. But anyway, if I were a drinker, that would have stopped me from drinking, just because the person who said it is known as a drinker. But anyway, so he becomes the symbolic figure of the old days. And, it's it's a refreshing take at first, and I know in my mind there's going to be a reason for this. So we also meet Tila. I forget who played young Tila in it. Jeez, for the life of me. Oh, let me just look real quick. I'm cheating. Yeah, it was Erie Farrell. I hope I'm saying that right. Because again, she was excellent as young Tila. She did a good job of acting with the absolutely crappy script that they gave. But there was a certain chemistry between young Adam and young Tila that was, that they established very well in this part. I will definitely give them that. Because you could see that she has sort of a maternal instinct on him at this age because she's older and much better at warrior games, and that's fine. That all follows canon, basically. We'll get into canon in a minute. So I think grown-up Tila is played by Camila Mendez, but we'll get to her anyway. So at that point now, we see that Adam is clumsy. He's useless in battle, and Man at Arms is doing his best to prop him up and everything. And then we get the visit from the marvelous, magical Burger King, Adam's father, Randor, played by was it James Purefoy? Um, okay, I know what they were trying to do in this scene, that they were trying to establish that Adam has to be tough in order to rule. Okay, but they spend the rest of the movie basically contradicting that. Okay, because, well, we'll get into that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But at that point now, he's, upset with how clumsy and seemingly weak Adam is. So he picks up a regular sword, gives him a sword, and starts going at him. Now, I get what they were trying to do. The father's trying to toughen his son up, okay? But the choreography for this was extremely over the top because even though he laid the blows high, so it probably wouldn't have hit the kid in the head, if he deflected that sword the wrong way, he'd have lost fingers. He could have lost an arm easily. So it was like basically a sword fight that bordered on child abuse. All right. And again, I am a sword guy. I taught my daughter how to use a sword. Okay. I am big on this. Everything from fencing to broadsword practicing, like a broadsword use, like I've done in Ren fairs and whatnot. Big on this kind of stuff. And I would have never done anything like that to my daughter, even if the stakes were high, because I wouldn't risk hurting her like that. But that's beside the point. That's neither here nor there. So personally, I thought that young Adam looked pretty impressive doing as many blocks as he did. I mean, he's backing up the whole time, but he's still throwing up the sword and he's still absorbing the hits on his arms. For a young man, that was the only sign of potential I saw in Adam in the whole movie was right there. And I said, well, okay, they established this pretty well. You know what I mean? So now, of course, this happens, and Adam has his underlying daddy issues, because the Burger King, he's always acts like a jerk to him, and it's because he's trying to toughen his boy up, but it's just done so superficially. There's no depth to it. There's no, maybe a scene of reflection. Maybe it would have been a good idea to have Adam's mother talk to him after he walked away and say, weren't you being hard on him? And then get a little explanation from the father. We don't get none of that. What we get is father walks away, everyone's upset. So now we've had the generic look at the city of Eternos, which appears as if it was designed by a pack of rogue umpalumps, who were inspired maybe by an acid trip watching the Munchkins on Wizard of Oz, because this doesn't look anything like a real city, and I mean it's bad CGI if ever there was. Um, some of the sets look better than others, like the down, in the cave type sets, but it just begs the question that in a technologically advanced society, why they, look like they're living this retro. Now, I know it did it also in the series, but I expected the movie adaptation to at least give us a culture of Eternos to explain it. I don't have a beef with it. I just want to understand why. They don't give you anything of that because there is no world building in this at all. All right. So the scene breaks to Skeletor's forces attacking the Crackerbox Palace, you know, and this again, this is a technologically advanced society. They have spaceships, but the city of Eternos has no air defenses whatsoever. These guys just fly in and land right there on the ground. It's just going to be a ground force war all the way. Ships are mere transportation, but we find out later they're not. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, okay, Skeletor's forces attack, and again, no anti-aircraft weapons. I was just sitting there like aghast. It made no sense to me. All right, so the city really gets sacked pretty easily, but not before Idris Elba does this really brilliant fight scene, and it was really well done. It captured sort of the spirit he portrayed in this adaptation of Man at Arms. A man who loves to fight, and some of it you can sense that maybe he has a certain fear in him, but he uses this to kind of overwhelm that fear so that he can continue fighting, kind of like Spider-Man with the quips. So they get attacked, okay, and Idris Elba does this great job of defending the castle, and then he runs across Trapjaw, I believe, and he puts up a good fight. It looks like he won, and at the last minute, Trapjaw pulls one of his little hand changes, and suddenly he falls down. So basically, all he did was hit him with an electric shock and knock him down. He just wasn't useful in a fight after that. Gila comes back, and I can't explain how a small teenage girl can help lift this guy, this full grown man in armor, and help him walk away, but yet that's how it happened. So, okay, let's assume that. We'll give him that. The defeat that he suffers there will haunt him throughout the film, and it will haunt us too, trust me. It also symbolizes, okay, we're going back to symbology, the old grizzled warrior type, and that he doesn't exist in this new, plane of existence, in this new age, so to speak. All right. When you see Man at Arms fall, it isn't just Man at Arms losing that fight. You see the fall of an age because he's basically him and the Burger King, Adam's father, are the relics of the previous age, the previous generation, which is what I guess Generation Z is trying to say about us. Us X gens, and now starting the millennials, and of course the boomers. So I get the idea of what they're trying to do there, and I saw the symbolism right away. So, they go through the machinations of trying to escape, which is going to lead to something. And with nowhere left to run, the sorceress opens up a portal to Adam's mother's world, Earth. It is specified there. All right, this is very important here. Okay. Uh, See, Adam's mother somehow landed a spaceship on Eternia because they don't explain it in this at all. It's funny because all of these movies are so obsessed with showing us the characters, and the origins. Like, every Spider-Man story is an origin or an allusion to the origin or whatever else. This gave us nothing, nothing. Anyway, that's beside the point. So the portal opens to Adam's mother's our home planet of Earth. That's our Earth, okay? And Adam is allowed to escape with the Sword of Power. Somehow going through this portal, which looks like I don't know, a psychedelic water park. We come out the other side, so it's very generic, same type of portal thing. Everybody's, even Doctor Who's used this kind of thing before. But anyway, he gets through to the other side, and somehow he and the sword are separated. All right. Now, he comes to Earth, and we have no idea what happens to him in the 15 years between when he went through that portal and when we see him now living his earthly life. Okay. Um, I mean, draw your own assumptions here as to how he was raised. Maybe Ma and Pa Kent picked him up, but kept him in the room under the stairs while they took care of their precious Clark. I don't know because the movie does not tell you what kind of upbringing he had on Earth. And I know why that is because it would take away in probably the writer's mind or the director's mind, it would take away from, his obsession with Eternia and the characters of Eternia and whatever else. But it was a poor way to go about it. Now, 15 years later, now I want you to realize, all right, well, you know what? Let's get to the part where this becomes relevant first. Okay, out of his childhood, all we know is that he had a teacher who resembled Eugene Levy, and he got made fun of because he drew a lot of pictures. You know, that's basically his whole childhood in the movie is this obsession with going back to Eternia, with finding the sword that he lost coming through the portal. All right. And it's so obsessive that now in his job, all right, his job is just basically douchebaggery. All right. He's, in some kind of very politically correct working environment. I guess he's in some kind of human services of some sort, and he deals with people's complaints, and they're very politically correct complaints. He gets dragged into his boss's office, and it's one of those very touchy-feely, type of exchanges where she's scolding him, but in the fake passive-aggressive, politest possible way, like politically correct people do. So, all right, we get treated to that, but let's leave that there for just a minute now. All right, we get an Easter egg at this point, somewhere around in the film at this point, and it's from Dolph Lundgren himself. And you know what? It was a good Easter egg. I am not going to knock it. I thought it was a kind of, a really nice thing to do in the film, and it started pulling me back in at this point, even though I had a million questions about the culture of Eternia and the culture that Adam grew up in on Earth. So anyway, we go back to Adam has, this obsession with finding the sword. It's such an obsession that it causes friction at his job because while he's talking to customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, he's looking up the sword here and there. He's checking pictures versus this and that and everything else. So this upsets his boss, and she brings him back to the office for the bollockson that I told you about. And he gets a message during this meeting, and where she's basically telling him this is like, you're about a hair away from getting fired. And he's in this meeting, and then he suddenly gets a message that he's found the sword. The sword has been found. So he walks out of the meeting. Now, a lot of people are like, well, see, that was just really making fun of all that stuff. And see, he walked right out at the first chance to go be manly. Ha 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 ha. No, no, it wasn't like that at all. All right. He walked out because he has this obsession with it. But he ends up acting like his boss the entire movie. All her politically correct nonsense he is espousing throughout the movie. In order to become He-Man, he's got to get more in touch with his feels, but we'll get to that. All right. So okay, so he finds the sword, and of course, he makes a complete idiot out of himself, stealing it from a mannequin who can't fight back and still literally holds his own. All right. Eat a box of rocks film. Um, it's like they just couldn't keep the stupidity and buffoonery on him enough. All right. He's the butt end of jokes from everybody. He has a discussion with his roommate about finding the sword because the sword is his whole worth. So presumably those 15 years on Earth at all did not touch him in any way. He didn't have any feelings for anybody on Earth except this sort of tacit, hipster friendship with his roommate. Um, don't ask me to explain that because it just seemed like a long non sequitur. All right. So he steals the sword from this mannequin eventually, and he runs out of the store. And of course, he's home trying it. He can't get it to do anything. And of course, we got to put the salt in the wound. He gets arrested. It's a female police officer, of course, and they put him in the car. And never in the history of anyone being arrested ever have they been put in the front seat. Okay, but there he is in the front seat so that we can see the ride of shame, you know, as it takes place. Well, during this ride of shame off to jail, Beast Man suddenly comes out of the portal and attacks. Now, there's a reason why Beast Man came. It's because uh, by Adam touching the sword or the sword being moved by Adam, I guess in some way, it sets off some kind of beacon on Eternia. And so Beastman shows up, totally trashes the police car. Adam is, useless in this fight. There's no spark of any kind of a hero in Adam at all. He's a complete coward. He runs away the whole time. At the last minute, he's, got his arms up like this. Oh, I'm gonna die. And of course, Tila comes in and saves the day. Um, there wasn't much of a battle with the Beastman after that, but she whisks him away off to her rocket ship, and suddenly they're back in Eternia in 5 minutes. Now, they explained that because the sword was moved or touched or whatever it was, that that's what drew them to know to come get Adam now. Okay, it's Earth. You guys have all this equipment that can do all these space jumps, just like a portal from the sorceress. Okay. And in all that time, in all those 15 years, you didn't go look for Adam and the sword. You didn't send maybe Tila and, someone else that doesn't look freakish on that planet, down there dressed as humans to assimilate with humans and try and find out where Adam went, try and find out where the sword is. It makes no sense. Basically, this technological society that can teleport galaxies and universes and dimensions and whatever else, okay, couldn't bother raising up a posse to find their prince, their supposed eventual savior. Just pointing it out. It's stupid. I mean, there was a lot of ways you could have said it, but, it made no sense the way they did. So, and it's not like they didn't know where Adam was because it was Adam's mother's home world, Earth. I assume the sorceress, who was free, could have, teleported people there, could have gone to look for him herself. Because apparently she shows up pretty good, later on in the film. But again, it's a stupid point, but it destroys the immersion in the film. It's just like in Supergirl when she doesn't take crypto to a yellow sun. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. That would have ended the entire movie, but we'll get there. But anyway, so at this point, now he's back, and of course, no one has any faith in him. People don't believe he's really Prince Adam. You know, he's the most buff nerd on the entire planet. I mean, it's pretty obvious, from how he looks that he should at least be somewhat formidable, but he's not, of course. But anyway, so we get you know, okay, so Adam, starts meeting people and he starts remembering his childhood, what he called people. And then we get those, really horrible double entendres, Ram Man and Fisto, and, insert your own jokes there. Um, the first time it was told, it wasn't funny. And guess what? We're going to get treated to more of that later in the film because it wasn't unfunny enough the first time. So we come back now to the home world. Tila, of course, is grown up. Um, the only thing that I will say here is that she is part of the redhead genocide from movies because Tila was a redhead and this Tila is of more exotic origins. So, because I'm not going to guess because I have no idea what the culture of Eternia is. So, anyway, not from this film, anyway, not from this adaptation. I know from the comic books and the cartoon series and the books, because I was a fan of He-Man when I was younger. So I know about it, but they don't show any of it here. It's just, apparently Eternia is just this, you know, Eternos is just this, city state, I guess, that was just waiting to be conquered for 15 years because they didn't even put up air defenses. Knowing that something like Skeletor exists out there, by the way. It wasn't like he was unknown to them. It wasn't like any of these other people were unknown to them. But I get ahead. I mean, I digress. All right, so we get the double entendres. Okay, now we see that Man at Arms is a useless drunk, which they will be dubious about later in the film, and that even makes it make even less sense. But anyway, Tila has to nursemaid him in addition to all her other concerns because you know he's the fallen past hero. The current stronghold is attacked by more of Skeletor's forces, forcing our heroes to run and hide. So at this point now, it's a bunch of them, but I mean, I believe it's Trapjaw that's pursuing Adam, Tila, and Man at Arms. All right, so it's almost cartoonish how they go and hide behind a jet or crates behind, they're one of their planes or whatever, and of course. At that point, Trapjaw comes in there, and Adam has the sword, and he goes out to face Trapjaw, but not to fight Trapjaw. No, 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 no. He feels at this point that he can apply some diplomacy, which will, stop the fight. Will stop him from fighting. This will just make everything all warm and lovey-dovey. And of course, that goes as you would expect. He makes a complete buffoon of himself. He does actually make an effort to fight here. He runs at him and crashes into his body and can't move him an inch. And he's a silly fool. So the film takes its last shot at Adam the buffoon. And then suddenly he figures out the formula, I guess, in his mind of how to become He Man. Because as we'll find out later, spoilers all over, uh, it's within him. And we'll get to that too, how sick and pathetic that came out. But okay, now at this point, we go into phase two of the movie because Adam suddenly becomes He Man, and much like Rey from Star Wars, he is proficient at everything as He Man. But it's still Adam in there, it's still Adam's mind being He Man. I, I mean, even Keanu Reeves had to download some, kung fu or aikido or whatever it was, just to be able to fight in the Matrix. He-Man, no download necessary. He just automatically suddenly has these incredible fighting skills. And there's one moment where apparently he doesn't know his own strength and he rips off Trapjaw's arm, uses the gun on that arm. By the way, it's a mechanical arm. He rips off the lower part of the arm, shoots Trapjaw's troops down, and he kicks Trapjaw's butt. But apparently, him ripping a mechanical arm off of a person is a bad thing, and we'll have scoldings for this later in the film. Okay, man trying to kill you, kill everybody that you know. You're suddenly reunited with all the people that you supposedly love so much that you drove everybody on Earth crazy for, and ripping a mechanical arm off of a guy somehow is a terrible thing to do. Eat a bag of sticks. All right. I try to keep it polite here. All right. So at this point now, he's not really He-Man. He's Steroid Ray because all the skills that he needs are suddenly acquired with his transformation into He-Man. But since Mary Sue is an overused phrase, I took the Queen, Ray, and this sort of steroid transformation appearance where I guess they tried to make an already buff Adam look shredded. And, now he's He-Man. That's why they keep him well shirted up the whole time in the movie, even though it's incredibly noticeable how muscular he already is. And of course, he's a buffoon and clumsy and, weak and cowardly and everything else. But that's beside the point. Now he's He-Man. Now all of a sudden he's Steroid Ray. He's got all the power he needs to do whatever he wants. But they escape the rest of Skeletor's troops in the same, I think, spaceship that came and got Adam from Earth. Uh, so Man-at-Arms is cajoled Tina to let him drunk drive, which is really, really funny. Not. And Tila orders He-Man to get on a space snowmobile he has no knowledge of and knock off the ships attacking them. And I only say snowmobile because it looks like a snowmobile. Well, I give them points here in a sense because when he first gets on the thing, he backs into the wall and then he gets it going forward and plummets straight down. But all of a sudden, his steroid ray reflexes kick in from rides he's never taken in his life, and he's able to maneuver this thing and literally be part of a dogfight. He's supposed to be, getting them off Atila's tail, and what ends up happening is they blow up I like to call it a Lobo scooter, because it reminded me of Lobo's Space motorcycle from the movie, but it was like more electric scooterish. But anyway, so they blow that up, and he magically, because the script demands it, he falls in such a way that he's able to take out the largest predatory ship with a punch, or with his hands, with his bare hands, let's say. And then he falls on, conveniently enough, he falls on another one, which he is able to easily punch out the windshield of and throw this person out of the windshield. Now, listen, we were worried about Lockjaw's arm earlier. I am pretty sure that unless this person is incredibly the most durable person ever, you know, that if you yank him out of a moving spaceship, whatever you want to call it, at the speed that he's going and you just throw him, he'll die. Does anybody not care about that? Okay. So that's the twisted morality that they operate at. Personally, I don't have a problem with that. I say kill all these people because they're way too powerful to let live. What are you going to do? Keep bonking them over the head and hope that they don't score a murder next time, or a kill or anything like that? Come on. All right, so Steroid Ray, at this point here, is driving the spaceship badly and, crash lands. And of course, Tila, who Idris Elba has to compliment at what a great pilot she is. How she's so awesome, even though she crashed too. But I mean, it was a dogfight. Yeah, I guess she won it, so whatever. But again, we have to hear that because again, we'll hear another one that's a real whopper later on in the movie. But that's beside the point. So after the spaceship crash lands, um, we get this moment that makes completely no sense at all. All right, I want the drunks and the geeks and the nerds to explain this to me because this is just as bad as rock paper scissors and Andor. Okay, the spaceship crash lands. Skeletor has rounded up the rest of the rebel fighters from Eternos, I guess, and he kills Moss Man apparently to threaten the others because he wants to know who the guy in the loincloth with the sword is. Make this make sense because the Beastman came to Earth to come and get that sword. All right. Everyone knew that Adam went through that portal with the sword as a child. Okay. It's pretty much not hard to figure out that a big blonde muscle man with the sword is Adam. And if Skeletor knew the lure of this sword and the power that it gives, then he would already know all of this. This was a completely senseless scene. I guess it was meant to show that Skeletor is sinister. Of course, they picked Moss Man to kill, because it's like, who cares? It's moss. You know what I mean? He burned moss. It's not too intense for younger viewers. Whatever. Okay. But it's a useless scene. It's a pointless scene. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. What is it that he needs to know about this guy? He already knows who he is. He already knows how he got his power. So, I mean, I, 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 I don't know. Anyway, I suggest that they at least make reservations for the writing team at a Holiday Inn Express, because then they would come up with maybe a better script than this. So we cut back to Tila, who decides to leave her drunken father to go search for He-Man, who got lost in, what I can only describe as a knuckle shuffle of a dogfight. And while she's out searching, Man-at-Arms suddenly decides to come back to his own. He shaves, he dons his uniform, uh, and you just get to thinking, wow, now we're getting to a redemption arc. Well, yeah, no, don't let your expectations be pulled up. But wait a minute, it's going to be even more confusing later in the film. Stay with me. So at this point, um, she finds He-Man out there, and I don't know. She's, they have a good long struggle session, about his ripping an arm off, apparently. Actually, that comes back late. That comes in later. That's when she's found him. They come back, and uh, Man at Arms is all shaved. He's got his Man at Arms uniform on, and the first thing he does is offer everybody a drink from his USB-looking flask. Okay, I guess you refill it by plugging it into a computer, and simulated booze comes out. Because that's what the flask tip looked like to me, anyway. So again, now we get the discussion about how it was wrong for Steroid Ray to rip off the bad man's arm. I mean, he was trying to kill all your fellow rebels. He's part of a plan for slaving all of Eternos and Eternia. And what the hell, writers? You chose the stakes in this abomination of an adaptation. And since your rebels are in no position to imprison anyone, what are they supposed to do? How do you win? Stop advocating for the murderers and write about saving the damn planet. Don't moralize, because it makes no sense. If you keep bonking this guy down and letting him get back up on the battlefield, and he has all these powers and everything, how many people are going to die? But anyway, I, I, I just can't reconcile how stupid and disjointed that is with the plot of this movie. So then he and Tila have a talk about feelings, because reasons. And at that point, Skeletor, uses the dial-up Wi-Fi network on Eternia. Apparently, I don't know, because I was it magic? Was it internet? I have no idea. And he contacts Prince Adam with a monitor there, and threatens his parents' lives unless he brings the sword to Skeletor's crib. So, okay, obviously they're going to agree to that. So they go, I guess, wandering through wherever they have to go to get to wherever this is. And they arrive. We get this rotten member Barry. He's standing there and he's going, their identify yourself or whatever. And of course, He-Man, I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. You know, Thankfully, Cringer wasn't there, so at least it would end there. It was a rotten member Barry, done poorly at a bad time in the movie. So this movie is a lot of and thens. All right, after the plane crashes, and then Skeletor reaches them by internet, and then they travel to Skeletor's palace. We see nothing of the travel; we just see them kind of make it there. Okay, and then uh, um, he goes inside. He's with Man at Arms and Tila, who are going to stand with him for some reason, be taken prisoner for no good reason. But I digress. Um, So he arrives there with the sword to save his parents. He's defiant to Skeletor in their, face-to-face meeting, of course, but he gets to see his father for the first time in 15 years. So I'm thinking finally, Nicholas Galitzine, gets to show us a little bit of his acting chops. No, wait. The moment is cut short by a gratuitous fight between He-Man and Skeletor's minions. Steroid Ray wins easily, but is frozen in space by Evil Lynn, just frozen right there in the room. So with nothing else with him being capable of doing nothing else, he basically shoots some kind of bolt of energy out of his sword, and this bolt of energy causes a collapse in the cave because this society that He-Man lives in apparently can't put in, structural integrity in these caves so that you don't have things like that happen. It's like make it make sense. I understand the blend of technology and respect for the past and whatnot, but it makes no sense to me. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, they live in a complete cave. It's just a cave, an unaltered cave. They got decorations in it. Maybe they cut out a few pieces of wall to make it look like furniture or something, but it's a cave. That's all it is. All right. So anyway, Adam is face to face with his father for the first time in 15 years, and really nothing happens. Steroid Ray fights Skeletor's minions and, of course, wins easily. He gets frozen by Evil Lynn. He shoots this bolt out. He causes a collapse of the roof of the cave, which kills his father, basically. I mean, he's not dead yet, but he's going to be. And spoiler alert. And it kind of knocks everybody for a loop. But of course, Adam is able to dig his father out of the rubble, and there's just enough time to clear up all of their daddy issues very conveniently. And of course, James Purefoy, in the marvelous, magical Burger King way, explains to Adam that he was only being hard on him because he looked so small in the world, and he wanted him to be big and strong and whatever else. All right, whatever. I mean, it was just like I had no feelings for this at all. I mean, I didn't feel anything between them or anything. And I like James Purefoy; he's a very good actor, and so is Nicholas Galitzine. He's an excellent actor. He's in something on Netflix for the life of me I can't remember the name of, but man, this guy can act. But anyway, that's beside the point. So the daddy issues are solved, and the Burger King goes off to the big French fryer in the sky. At this point, Skeletor pulls a move from the WWF and sneaks up behind, or is it whatever it is now? Okay, it sneaks up behind He-Man, and with one bonk over the head with his staff, He-Man is knocked unconscious. Most powerful man in the universe, one punch knockout. I haven't been this disappointed since Glenn Danzig. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. He-Man is taken. He's Adam again now, and he's thrown into prison. And him and Man at Arms sit down to talk feelings again because that's the most necessary thing to do when imprisoned and trying to find a way to, win this battle. Now, in this part, Man at Arms does this dubious thing where he says, "It's better she thinks of me as an old drunk who's worth saving than an old failure who's worth nothing." Now, I don't know if that's supposed to mean he's been faking the whole time, if he just started faking recently, what the story is there. All right. I have no idea. But basically, he was content to just live as a useless bum all those years. Uh, I don't know, drinking or not even drinking. Okay. It doesn't, either way, it's just, in his mind, basically, it's okay for her to think of him as a loser drunk, but just a loser, that's mm, I I don't understand the logic here. It's just too convoluted for me. And again, I watched that part twice. I wish I could have seen it more times. But I mean, the way that the conversation goes to me said that he's been faking the whole time. So, I mean, like, I don't know. I can't understand this part of the movie at all. All right, even if he had been a real drunk, I could accept and understand. All right, he screwed up, and he wasn't able to keep his vow to protect Adam's family and all the children and all that. He got his butt whooped. And I mean, honestly, it was a meager butt whooping. I mean, he got hit with some kind of electronical weapon and it disabled him. And it wasn't like he didn't keep everybody safe. Nobody died, and Adam managed to get away. And so I don't know, but he took on the loser persona because the film needed him to. Made no sense at all. So, okay, we don't know if he's been faking it all this time or not, but anyway, it makes no sense. Now, I say, I don't know. I still get caught up in, well, even if he did get defeated, he has a duty to protect them still, you know. He had Tila there, he still had to protect her. I mean, who raised her the rest of the way? What, she raised herself on her own? He wasn't protective of her in that time? No, he just pretended to be a drunk that whole time? Makes no sense. Um, Man at Arms, and I know they tell us don't go by canon, this is adaptation. But Man at Arms, his character is nothing like this. I mean, Man at Arms, if he takes a beating this time, he just tries to figure out something better to do next time. He was one of those characters on He-Man who would, sometimes win a fight, sometimes, need He-Man's help to win, sometimes be taken hostage, just like Tila, you know. So I'm not getting this Man at Arms, but I get what they were trying to do because again, they're trying to make you feel like the old ways and the old warriors' ways are outdated now. They're done. They're beat down, and that's basically what you know he portrayed from then on. All right. So after this conversation between him and Adam, they both settle down to like this cringy cry scene. It's like really stupid. I guess it's supposed to be men crying, but they don't really know how. But as long as we get them crying, then the feels, are appeased. It was complete and utter cringe. And speaking of cringe, that's when they bring out Cringer all grown up. Now, as cringy as the crying was, Cringer, who was Adam's pet, okay, hasn't seen him in 15 years, but still, asks permission to lick Adam. I kid you not. This has the power, right? Right, right, drunk dude? Right? Nerds, this is a really good movie, right? Right? This is awesome. Awesome. This is what you've been looking for. Awesome. It has the power. Oh, come on. This is why I start doubting their objectivity. And I'll get to even more why in a bit. But anyway, so at this point here in the movie, I'm banging my head against the cushion seat, hoping that it doesn't prevent the brain damage that I need to get through the rest of this film. All right. But I endured because there was something that has to be said here. When I thought it really couldn't have gone any worse, it gets worse. Because after the cringy lick scene and the cringy cry scene, we get this Adam gathers all the prisoners who are apparently in one cell that's with one animal and a battle droid, all in the same cell. I didn't see a bucket anywhere either. How do they go to the bathroom in there? And he calls for a, I kid you not, team building exercise. No joke. Please, somebody give me a Tylenol. So we get the reiteration of the fist and the ramrod joke because it wasn't lame and on the nose enough the first time. We've got to be treated to that juvenile humor again, that double entendre that makes writers feel like they're so clever. So they end up breaking out of prison by a method that should have been obvious before this team building exercise. The gates are made of stuff that nobody can get through. Fisto can't punch through it, whatever else. But because everyone lives in caves in this advanced society, there is rock. And of course, Fisto and Ramrod can break open rock. Oh, just horrible. This is just makes no sense at all. Well, these superpowered people on a planet, you'd think they would keep them in a cell where you have some, I don't know, interplanetary titanium. Maybe the walls are made of the same stuff as the cage thing. Whatever. So at this point now, they commit absolute blasphemy because they're doing that. The wall falls and you see the wreckage and the smoke behind them, a few sparks here and there, and you hear, I kid you not, Queen, Princes of the Universe. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, I get. Oh, Princes of the Universe, Masters of the Universe. Ooh, we're clever. We're James Gunn. Oh, come on. What you did was you blasphemed a great movie. You blasphemed a TV show that was good for 5 out of 6 seasons. All right, let's say 4 out of 6 seasons, 4.5 out of 6, the TV show. But anyway, I digress. I'm not going to get into Highlander now because we're going to be doing that in the future too. That's the franchise I claim. That's the thing I know the canon of. I've watched every Highlander thing ever created. I read all the stupid books, even the romance novels, and I Highlander's my thing. And this to me was just absolute crap. It's just, oh, I can't even describe to you what it felt like. So, okay, I mean, I'm watching that. I'm thinking, could Kurgan please just come out of somewhere and start beheading these people? Anyway, they arrive at Grayskull for the climax, so now you can insert your own Fisto and Ram Man jokes there. Uh, uh, Before heading into battle, Man at Arms tells Tila, and I quote, he wishes he were the man she is. Oh, oh, Idris. What the hell, dude? Come on, man. I know you like to play the politically correct circuit and that you're left leaning and everything, but come on, dude. You should have fought for that line to get it removed. That was just utterly pathetic. And it's meant to emasculate men. Furthermore, it's meant to emasculate men my age, that our ways were barbarian and old, and we wish we were the men that this generation of soy children are. Give me a damn break. All right, so we get to the last battle now. All right, and Evelyn squares off with Tila. Now, instead of using her immobilization spell, which held He-Man, a far stronger being than Tila, they decide to hand it because Tila's a sorceress and they're always really good at hand to hand, aren't they? Wow. So obviously, the film wants Tila to win, so they scripted it so that she can win, and that's that. I mean, it just made no sense. So Man at Arms and his battle robot are fighting for Skeletor's minions outside, and we get how AI is such a person now. We grieve when they sacrifice for us and get shot and hurt and looks like they're dead, and we're supposed to be sad because it's a robot. I can get being sad because it's a piece of machinery that you put your time into and everything, but not for it as a sentient being. I mean, that's the problem we're all in now with all this kind of crap with AI. But anyway, I digress. So Man at Arms is doing his fighting outside. Skeletor and Adam go at it. So they battle for about 30 seconds before Skeletor breaks the Sword of Power. I don't write them, folks. Instead of using the stump to kill Adam right there and then, he decides, as you would, of course, to walk a mile in Adam's head and further humiliate him using the stuff from the beginning of the movie, only with Skeletor appearing in it in a hoodie, basically. Uh, I don't know. A lot of people said this was funny. Maybe. I don't know. I didn't find it funny. I found it stupid. I couldn't understand why he's holding, this chunk of broken sword and he doesn't just shove it into the kid's chest and end this whole thing and then just continue his whatever he's doing. And we'll get to that in a second too. So we get all these, worthless flashbacks from the beginning, and finally, Skeletor stabs him with the sword stub. And we get the most humiliating, the most ridiculous, the most pandering to the SJW speeches in his illusion that you could possibly have in this movie. All right. And it's okay. Suddenly, a bird version, and I don't even want to guess what freaking goony bird it was. Um, a bird version of the sorceress comes up and tells Adam that he's not like the other wielders before him, meaning the man at arms type generation. They were chosen for strength, just strength. That's it, just strength. But Adam is something more because he has empathy and understanding and humanity. Oh, yippee, more feels. And we learned the lesson that the whole time the power was within him, this whole movie, which also just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So basically, all the other He-Man type figures, whatever they may be, that existed before Adam in this adaptation, I'm not going to get into the real canon of it. Um, all of these He-Man figures were just brute strength. They had no sense of humanity. Uh, they had no sense of understanding. So they were basically the Incredible Hulk with a sword, and you know, probably would have cared less about if they had killed people from Eternos or, bad guys. Make this make sense. Because if you have no humanity, you have no, at least a basic level of empathy, and you have no understanding, then you don't understand what you're doing it for. You're just a muscle brute beating up anything in front of you. That's makes no sense. There, I said it. So, okay, we get treated to his feels again, and now all of a sudden, in true steroid ray fashion, he wakes up, pulls the sword out of his own chest, suddenly magically heals, and he reforges it with his will. I'm assuming, because he holds the sword up, and all the little pieces that fell suddenly come all back together in the sword, and it's whole again. And he becomes Steroid Ray once more, because now he's going to put Skeletor in his place for being so insensitive to others' feelings. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. So he, of course, tries a discourse, more diplomacy. And it's at this point we get Skeletor's ultimate motivation throughout the whole film. He likes being the bad guy. That's it. That's his whole motivation. He likes being the bad guy. That's it. That's all he's got. There's no bigger reason. There's no revenge factor. There's no, I am envious of the rich because I grew up poor, whatever. There's none of that. He just likes being the bad guy. That's all the motivation that we've had to go through this mess. To stop someone who likes being the bad guy. All right. So anyway, Jared Leto, I'm going to say, was actually a pretty decent Skeletor. But the thing is, they wrote him so one-dimensionally that he really had nothing to do here. He was entertaining and he was funny when the script called for it. Although some of that campy humor, in my mind, diminished Skeletor as the formidable evil that he is, because I'm sorry, truly evil dudes don't have campy moments like that. Like where he makes a joke and nobody laughs, and Evil Lynn's gotta, be the sycophant and get everyone to laugh. It's pathetic. It's sad. It's sorry. What they did to Skeletor. Now I know they're taking a little bit from the cartoon vein, but the thing is that you didn't write it in the way of the cartoon vein. If you had, then I could understand it, and you would have had Orko in it, which would have made a lot more sense. But you wrote it the way that you did because you wanted Skeletor to just be a one-dimensional bad guy. You didn't want to put any of the work in, any of the labor in to give him a backstory that would have made him a compelling bad guy. We have no idea whether we should, just hate him or just assume that he's just another bad guy. He has nothing to hang on to, nothing to feel sorry for, nothing to hate him about, and he's just a flat one-dimensional character. So anyway, the battle is relatively brief. Steroid Ray palms his staff. Now he palms it. I guess he squeezes it and breaks it. The ram staff that he has, and then suddenly this rainbow wave comes out, and it's like a shock wave apparently because it knocks Man at Arms off his feet. But what it also does is these tall statues of the previous heroes of Eternia all get knocked down. Now, somehow, Man at Arms in his armor was able to withstand this shot, but these large stone monoliths, that are, thick and really, really, really weigh tons, okay, they go right down. Again, this is symbolism. This is to show that the old world has fallen. We have to be new and touchy-feely with our feelings in order for us to thrive in this new world. That's what they were telling you. And basically, it was a rainbowy shockwave, too. So, I mean, it was just SJW all the way down. So, okay, the old heroes now are fallen human beings, basically, and the new, better way has replaced them. The touchy-feely world of SJW governance and the discussion of feelings. The epilogue features Man-at-Arms and He-Man, well, Adam, actually, again discussing feelings before he rushes off to do some He-Man thing. And then apparently there's some joke that everybody's in on, except Adam, that they all know that he's Adam, but still he runs away to turn into He-Man. Because we just can't keep the level of buffoonery up enough for Adam. So there you have it. Now, I want to ask the drunks, the nerds, the geeks, does it really have the power, or were you drinking Kool-Aid shots? Because it seems to me that a lot of the reviews that they've been doing have been softening a lot lately. Like another thing that I heard in the Supergirl review, which I'm not going to give you a total review, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an oversight into that right now. The Supergirl movie was Guardians of the Galaxy 3 with a rewrite. That's really all it was. You had in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I'm doing this off the top of my head without notes, so bear with me. Rocket gets shot by Adam Warlock, which, oh boy, did they do Adam Warlock dirty. Oh man, I love the kid who played him. I think he could have made a good Adam Warlock, but they made Adam Warlock a campy, silly character, a mama's boy, in fact. So Adam Warlock blasts Rocket, and Rocket has internal damage. And in order to repair the internal damage, for some reason, they need this code. That's it, a series of numerics to open him up so they can fix him in some way or what. I don't remember completely. Supergirl, the plot is Crypto gets shot by a some kind of poison, and it's on a red sun, so it was able to penetrate his skin, and the the bad guy, takes her ship and goes away. And basically, Supergirl spends the whole time chasing after what was his name, Hem or Jim or whatever, Flem, I don't know. But anyway, she was chasing after him the whole movie, trying to get closer to him so that she can get the stuff to heal Crypto. Well, Guardians of the Galaxy were going around the galaxy the whole movie, basically trying to get to the High Evolutionary so that they could get the codes to help Rocket. It's the same exact plot. Only Guardians of the Galaxy 3, although a very flawed movie, did it much, much better than Supergirl. But anyway, the one thing that everyone they parrot each other. Once you get the one, like usually one, it's the drinker that's the most dominant one, because everyone likes him because he's good looking and he's smooth and he writes really well. He writes great books. I've read them. The man is gifted. Okay, I'm not going to take anything away from the guy. But as far as criticism goes, oh boy, has he gone soft. Now, first we have to hear that Millie Alcock, and that's the last time I'm saying that because they were all saying it because they love to say the name. And you know why. It's obvious. For the same reason that they had to use the Fisto joke in He-Man twice. It's juvenile humor. But anyway, they're giving her an excuse for her red carpet uh, um, comments. And they're giving her a pass. Well, listen, I admire Millie Alcock. All right, so I did it again, right? Now I'm doing it. I admire her for having the talent that she has to go from somebody who didn't even really finish school, all right, and worked, to support herself, into this incredible talent that she is. I'm not going to take one step away from that. But the thing is, now they're talking about, well, what she said in press interviews, like, oh, the Christian fathers. No, no, it wasn't excusable. She wasn't making some other kind of point. She was taking a stab at Christian fathers. Okay. And, her other comments about the LGBT thing and all that. Look, Millie has a publicist, more than one publicist, a firm that handles her. They should have taught her how to do those interviews. It is not a pass for her because you know what? If you or I would have said what she said in the wrong settings, it would have been punishment for us. Okay. And like, at your job, let's say you work at let's say, a conservative place, and you just kind of let them know that, you hate Christian fathers and you want to boost the LGBTQ agenda, and whatnot. I mean, how you're going to get perceived, isn't going to be, well, they're young. They only said that because they're young. How you get perceived is you dislike Christians. Now, if you go to their world, where He-Man works, Adam, where Adam worked on Earth. I wonder he wanted to get off Earth so bad. Um, it's all touchy-feely. So if I go in there saying, well, I don't accept LGBTQ values, and I don't accept people that don't believe in God. Okay, now what's going to happen now? All right, what's going to happen to you on that red carpet? No, I'm sorry. There is no double standard. They don't get away with it because they're young. She's extremely wealthy. She's made 50 times what any 20 of us watching this have made in our lifetime already. Okay. And she has people. She has a publicist. She has an agent. She has people that prepare her for the press. Oh, I'm sorry. She said something when she was drunk. So did Jimmy the Greek. Look what happened to him. Granted, an older man should have known better, but still, you caught him with a few drinks. You said the wrong thing. What was it? It was career suicide. He had to be forgiven by the alleged rapist, Bill Cosby, of all things. And even then, he was done, basically. So, no, she doesn't get a pass. No, it's not okay. No, the studio didn't just leave her out there like that. All right. She has her own resources. She has, as they all love to use this term, which is terribly overused, she has her own agency, literal agency that handles her press and teaches her how to talk to the press. All right. If you want to insult half the audience out there, then fine. Now, I'm not saying that's why Supergirl failed. Supergirl failed infinitely for so many other reasons. It's disgusting. You know what I mean? It was I won't give it a one, obviously, because it's not a one movie, but I mean, it bounces between a three and a four because it has no plot structure. It has no, real story. It's just, Supergirl doing an and then until she gets to the MacGuffin, and now she's able to save Crypto's life. That was the whole deal. In He-Man, we get treated to Adam's a buffoon. He-Man, even though he's steroid Ray in a lot of parts because they didn't want to, write him actually having to train and work and understand and know his powers. He just has him right off the bat, full swing, just like Ray. I mean, better than everybody at everything. I understand he's the strongest man in the universe, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be as skilled as he was. Okay, if you just shown him with, using brute strength to overcome people like a Hulk type battle, yeah, I can understand it. Grab some ankles and start bashing people, give them the old Loki shuffle, smash them around on the floor. That makes sense. But he was battling like an experienced battler. Well, you could say, well, it infuses his mind with the. There's really nothing to say that it does, that anything from the past infuses into him, that the sword doesn't do anything else but give him power to do as he will as He-Man. So anyway, Millie Alcock doesn't get off the hook for her comments. I'm sorry. Be more professional. Try not to alienate your audience. And I certainly don't believe that, like I said, that had much to do with it being a bomb. It was an abysmal movie on many levels. Would have been nice to watch on a Saturday afternoon or something, You have a couple of laughs at how stupid it is, a few scenes that are, worth it, like Lobo. And that's another thing I disagree with them with. They oh well, there he was. What's the guy's name? Played Lobo. I know, everybody. Jason Momoa. Okay, so Jason Momoa, was just being Jason Momoa. Well, honestly, how did you want him to be as Lobo? Was he supposed to be different? I mean, okay, I could have some, understanding with his portrayal of Aquaman, as being very Lobo-esque. But as far as playing Lobo goes, he played Lobo to the T. The only thing that I hated about Lobo in that movie was he had that CGI cigar, which looked stupid, and he wasn't given enough time to really do what he can do. But he really saved that movie for the time that he was in it. Now, Little Platoon says that, like anyone could have done that in a different way, depending on who the character was. They could have brought that, kind of level of, interest in the outside character. I don't think so, because one thing that you have to give Jason Momoa, and I dislike the person personally, what he says and everything, but there's no denying this. The man has physical presence and gravitas. He has a face that is, interesting to look at. It looks like it's been places and has done things, you know, and it makes you wonder about him when he plays a character. What places and what things has this character done? When he played Lobo, he looked exactly like the comic book. He acted exactly like Lobo does. The only thing that they did was they nerfed him a bit because there's no way that the pirate guy, could have possibly taken down a guy who destroyed his whole home planet. But okay, I digress. Now, where I'm getting back to in Supergirl, James Gunn basically must have handed the writer, I forgot her name already, uh, the uh, the script from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and said, make it your own. Because the Guardians of the Galaxy went around the galaxy, chasing after the High Evolutionary. When they finally do confront him and take him on, it turns out he's got tons of look like young children on his, in cages, the same way they looked in Supergirl, by the way, except it was just a smaller crowd. Um, and of course, in the High Evolutionaries world, it wasn't to necessarily impregnate them, although that may have been a part of it. We have no idea. Um, but it was, to experiment on them. So is that any better than trafficking young children for, you know, PDF file purposes, or, to experiment on them like Fauci did with the beagles and the flybites? Okay, so it was the same kind of idea, and it was the same thing at the end of Supergirl. They freed the girls, you know. In Guardians of the Galaxy, they at a great risk and peril to themselves, freed all the children, not just a few, not just the ones they liked. They freed all of them, the animals too, and rushed them onto the ship. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 had, like I said, it had problems, but it wasn't a bad movie. It was, you know, it could have been better. It, was a little bit all over the place and a few too many and thens in it, but it was still a relatively good movie. Supergirl used the same basic plot structure, and it was complete and utter garbage. All right. So I'm sorry that they missed that. That's where the plot for Supergirl came from, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's, any good writer could have told you that, and a few have. But also that, they make Supergirl into, well, it's a one-star movie, it's a two-star movie. Come on. You know, the only reason I would go as low as three is because other than Lobo, there wasn't a decent male character in the whole movie, except for Clark, who is, the buffoon. You automatically lower my opinion of your film when you resort to something like the dog peeing on Superman at the beginning of the movie. I mean, that was just idiotic. But here we were. So Supergirl, like I said, I give it about a four. I mean, it would be an entertaining afternoon watch, not necessarily as a superhero film, more as like laugh out loud comedy, pretty much, because that's really all it was. Certainly not the way James Gunn wanted it interpreted. Now, I know I'm running long tonight, and I don't care. I hope you don't either. Stay with me. We got more. Now, I want to discuss again, going back to the drunk and his critique of the Odyssey. He is actually espoused, and I'm going to take the comparison with Spider-Man. He actually espoused that the Odyssey was a good movie, objectively speaking, a good movie. And he espoused that Spider-Man, he would be charitable, but he's going to give it a thumbs up. Wow, where have we gone? Let me just go through this. The Odyssey is like this. The Odyssey is a great visual spectacle. I certainly appreciate anyone who uses practical effects over CGI any day of the week. And Christopher Nolan is the master of practical effects in the modern era right now because there aren't a lot of people doing it and doing it to the extent and the level that he did it. That I will give him. So I want you to think of the Odyssey as this plate of pasta, you know, and the sauce is put on there, you know what I mean? And the sauce is all those wonderful, bizarre angle shots, which I do like. Moulin Rouge really turned me on to odd angle takes in film. And he has that ability and he uses it well. Um, I don't think the fight scenes were very well choreographed. They look kind of, stupid and silly. But here's where when you do an adaptation, again, I'm going to criticize them for this in a second, but when you do an adaptation, yeah, you can't expect it to be, the original. You can't expect it to be right out of the book. I totally understand that. That's how adaptations are. That's how adaptations have always been, you know. But adaptations can capture the spirit of the story. All right. Now, what's weird about these guys, the geeks and the nerds and the drunks, they all consider like when you change the mythos of Doctor Who from the beginning, that it is not a modern adaptation, that you are breaking canon. But they tell me don't stand on canon in like comic book films because they're adaptations. Okay. Getting back to the Odyssey. You had a bunch of, okay, the first thing they did was they changed the entire spirit of Odysseus. Even the woman who wrote the translation, the feminist translation it was based on, said that Nolan did a horrible job of characterizing. Horrible. Well, I mean, I don't know if she used that exact word, but basically it's what she meant. All right. It was not well done. She didn't like it, and she thought he fell short of her expectation of the translation. Now, personally, I didn't like her translation of it either. But I will say that it was far more generous to the characters than Nolan was. Nolan wanted a beat down Odysseus, a representative of the old ways, who now has to regret everything that he does. Nolan also takes away one of the most important parts of the Odyssey, which is the gods, takes them completely away from everything. They're not really a part of this. It's more like a distant sort of thing. Now, again, yeah, what does a Christian care about pagan gods? Well, I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people who read the Odyssey, came to Christianity, from humble beginnings like that. But then also a lot of the more current translations of the Greek in the Bible come from backup texts like, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and, numerous other stories from the time. But the Odyssey is the most stand out of its kind, and it's an enlightened work. All right. So again, going back to my analogy. All right. So the Odyssey itself is the spaghetti. All right. It's just a big old mess. Now you're putting this beautiful sauce on it because you're creating all these beautiful practical effects. You're creating some scenes that are really well executed. I can't take that away from the film. There were some scenes that were really well executed. But the plot itself is now you're putting meatballs on it, but the meatballs are mixed with dung and you're putting it right on top of this. So yeah, you have all these savory, wonderful ingredients, but the actual meat of the story is crap. You understand? The meat of the story is crap. You could do all you want with the effects. You could do all you want with, the staging of things. All right. But when you remove the central elements, you don't create an adaptation. You create another story using other people's characters in a way that you want to see them, not in a way that they were in any way meant to be portrayed. But yet they'll tell you, that like Lord of the Rings, what is their biggest complaint with the Lord of the Rings series on Amazon? It doesn't follow Tolkien canon. Am I right? They're mad that Sauron is introduced at, in this when he shouldn't be around for a long time yet. Okay, I agree. I got no problem with that. That's a pretty good, legitimate argument. But at the same time, in this, what you've got the gods are removed from a story about the gods and how they interact with man. Yeah. And the one god that they actually show in the thing is basically his imaginary friend, his psychological comfort hallucination, you know, and that's it. There's your gods. You can't do that to a work like the Odyssey. And someone as accomplished as the drunk should definitely know that this is not a good adaptation at all. Now, all I can think is these guys are softening up because they're trying to draw in new people. You could describe all kinds of motives to why they're suddenly becoming like this. All right, like maybe he might have books and negotiations for deals, and he doesn't want to alienate anybody. But you're not giving an objective view of the Odyssey when you portray it like that. You just avoid it altogether because you said the movie's misunderstood. No, the movie misunderstood the Odyssey completely. Now, on the other side, everyone's clutching their pearls in the MCU fandom because Jean Grey killed some people. And they said, well, the movie seemed morally okay with that. I think what the movie did was it left it open, okay? Because in the future we're probably going to have some ramifications. Don't forget this was an introduction to Jean Grey. It was not her movie. She was the, I guess, main antagonist, you could say. Uh, but it wasn't her movie, and it wasn't meant to tell her whole story. It was meant to give you a microcosm. Well, then people are like, well, why didn't she use her powers to jump to this one and do that and presumably get the information? The girl is in a state of arrested development. She just watched her sister be taken, all right? And her sister's last altruistic act was to make her walk away and forget it, at least for the time that it was happening. So, do you expect that a teenage girl that's been traumatized to that degree, and obviously, if they're on their own like they were, they've probably both been traumatized to a degree before that, too, and she's supposed to make rational decisions? No. If you had great power, in the original superheroes Secret Wars, right? Mr. Fantastic calls out Doctor Doom for the one thing that he did, that he showed that his vanity was, his humanity was above and beyond the power that he had absorbed, and that he fixed his face. He didn't need to fix his face if he was all powerful, but he still had an ego in there. Now, in a young girl's case, she has an ego. She's worried about her sister. She thought she was trying to save her life. She has no idea who took her. She had to find that out from scratch. And yeah, probably she could have done it better, but she didn't have anybody advising her, anybody guiding her through this. That's what they're showing. She's an undisciplined model, all right, and now she'll be part of the X-Men, and hopefully, whatever they do in those movies, will reflect more on who she is and about her. But again, everyone's like incredibly uptight about this. Look, I don't like any superheroes that have to kill, but I also think that killing is necessary. Now, mind you, in her case, it was innocent people, and that was wrong. When she made MJ jump and all that other stuff, that was wrong. But again, she is a young child that's caught up in her hate and her bitterness, and she's looking for someone to at least see her. And that's why everything changed when she got inside Peter's head. He kept her out in the beginning, but at the end of the movie, she gets inside Peter's head and she has a conversation with Aunt May. And she finds out that there is a certain warmth in humanity, and that there are good people out there, and that there are people that care and say kind things. And it seemed like something she wasn't used to. I think that Jean Grey was a very tragic character in the story. I was amazed they let her stay a redhead, because they already bumped MJ. But yeah, I know. And Tila in the He-Man thing, they bumped her too. Um, but anyway, she wasn't part of the redhead genocide. But anyway, again, she was a tormented character. She was young, she was immature. She knew how to control her powers because that's all that she thought about and all she cared about doing. It didn't make her some great strategist that could figure out stuff that you, me, the geeks, the nerds, and the drunks could all figure out in 5 minutes because, we read this stuff, we take this in. This was her life. So again, it doesn't make her right, doesn't make what she did right. All right. But at the same time, I don't understand why they're saying, well, morally ambiguous. No, she was morally wrong. There's no moral ambiguity there. But also, how do you control someone like her? You would need the X-Men or something like that. Who could stop Jean Grey as she was, as powerful as she was? Now, remember, you guys that are telling me that the Odyssey is an adaptation, so the original story isn't canon, okay, then shut up about Jean Grey, because then the original story about Jean Grey isn't canon, obviously, because in this adaptation of her beginnings, all right, she's in a different time, in a very different place, in a different way, and she acts, you know, in a different manner than you're used to her being in. So don't tell me not to clutch my pearls about this adaptation, and then you're going to use her canon and compare it against this adaptation. Now you're just conveniently structuring arguments to make your points, whether they're salient or not. And everyone wanted to have a problem with Spider-Man for some reason because it was so well received. I'm not going to say it was the greatest movie ever, but it was the greatest superhero movie in a long time. It was about what being a hero was. Spider-Man wasn't hated. He's loved by New Yorkers. That was a beautiful touch. That gave it some culture. That gave it some life. Spider-Man was courageous right to the bitter end, even taking a bullet to save Jean Grey's life. From the Punisher, by the way, whom he instantly forgave for doing that. Of course, the Punisher has to have a, very somber moment, tearful moment about shooting Peter and all that. But okay, fine. I could see that, because Spider-Man, Peter is an exceptional human being. Okay. But again, they're trying to tell me that there's something wrong with that portrayal of Jean Grey and that Spider-Man movie because of it. And yet there is nothing wrong with the Odyssey the way that it is. You see what I'm saying about the dichotomy that they make in films? I mean, the Odyssey, like I said again, is a dish layered with beautiful pasta, a lovely red sauce, and then, turd infused meatballs right on top because the meat of the story is absolute and utter garbage. Basically, every move that Odysseus makes in that movie is a struggle session, and he has an occasional moment of arrogance, which were in the story, but the way that they presented it here, it wasn't a consistent vein of how they did it. And again, you know what? I'm not even going to get into the casting choices of, you know, uh, you know, putting Elliot Page in it, and um, I can't even remember the other actress's name. But I mean, you know what? The race swaps, that was just more of the silliness. Because basically we're told that we have to respect every culture under the sun and their ways and what they want and how they perceive themselves, and yet you couldn't put a decent Greek actor in the Odyssey. I mean, I think there was one guy that was, I guess, noticeably Greek. Everyone else was of a different race. It's not their story. Okay, just like, a Hawaiian story about Moana is not about, boys in the hood. So to me, I don't know. I just don't get it. And the other thing too is, they're clutching their pearls over Jean Grey being a killer, but yet none of them clutch their pearls about Citizen Vigilante. And I love this movie, by the way. All right. But he's an anti-hero, and I'll tell you why. There's a scene in it where he's driving a car with a guy and he's trying to explain to him how human beings are sheep, that we're just cattle, and that we will do. So, in order to make his point, he goes head on facing another car, and the other car won't change to the other side of the road because they're so sheeple minded that they can't, do that, which a is stupid because if I see a car coming at me in whatever lane I'm in, I'm going to change lanes. But I digress. But anyway, the point is, he literally kills an innocent person to make an academic point. There's another point in the movie where he's killing the rapists of this young girl. Okay, that's fine. But he also kills the mother and the daughter. Look, they may encourage it. They may make excuses for it, but they didn't do it. And to kill them off with the rest of the family made absolutely no sense to me. And it, degraded the character in the sense that I can't see him as a heroic character, but I still see the message that he's sending as an important one. You know, it's not so much a moral message now as a, reality to life message. But again, they had no pearl clutching over that. He kills innocent people in the movie, but it's still an awesome movie and no complaints about that. But yet, Spider-Man, who puts out an actual serious spread for the amount of money that Sony spent on this, okay, and really gives us a real superhero movie with its own actual hero's journey from the beginning to the end of the story. Yes, they only mentioned his turning primal spider a little bit in the movie. You know why? Probably because they have plans to do more with it in the future. Okay, it began then and it rolled back just enough that he could get through the episode, But it would be interesting, to see if That's maybe why he survived that bullet from the Punisher, because according to Candace Owens, shit has been spread out all over the place. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so there you have it. They're getting inconsistent now, and I've noticed this 100 times. When they tried to tell me the Thunderbirds was a good movie. What? Are you joking me? But at that time, I thought they were so desperate for, men to get to act like men at least sometimes, that they took that for a good movie. But now I'm beginning to see this pattern where it's hard to tell what they like and what they don't like anymore, because it's not based on the objective standards that they've always used. They just kind of change their standard for every review. So there you have it. People are saying to me, why are you talking about films? You used to be the Christian guy, the MAGA chaplain, all these other things. Well, because right now I am trying to sell the IP for Crossing Corpses. It is, you can find, there are links to where you can get to it. You can find it on Podbean. All right. And I'm trying to get the word out there, not to try and line my pockets. There's no commercials on there or anything. All right. But yes, I do want to sell the IP. But here's what you might like. I don't just want to sell the IP for my own gratification or to just line my pockets, although I do have a few things I would like to buy. I want to do it so that I can enter into a consortium where we buy a left-wing property, something that people have seen on television as an SJW show, and then we take the show and we swap out the SJW, the LGBTQ, and the whatever else for what we decide we want to have. Like real Christian characters, real people that lean right, real people that are leftists but aren't douchey like these progressives and the Marxists. Okay, I have an IP in mind. I have my eye on it, and it is a doable thing in a partnership. But I certainly need to be able to put up my fair share. I don't want to ask you. I'm not going, well, please give me money so I can buy this IP. That's ridiculous. I can't do it that way. What I'm asking you is please help me sell the IP to Crossing Corpses to somewhere. Let's get this made as a TV show, as a movie, a cartoon, even a video game. Who knows? All right. Help me. Listen to it first. If you don't think it's good enough, and hey, PegLegCraig, we don't want to hear your crap. All right. But check it out and see if I don't give Christians a fair shake. Portray men as men, portray strong women as strong women who are capable and can do things, just maybe not in the same way a man can. All right. So check it out, and bring attention to it somehow, please. Get the word out there. Again, it's not because I got commercials. You don't see any commercials on anything I do. All right. I mean, look, if you can drop a few bucks in the kitty to help me produce more shows, I would appreciate it. But if you can't, I don't care. Just please help me get the word out about it. Let me make it into something where I can go to a indie film company or, whatever else kind of production company, and I can get something made out of it, and I can walk out of there with a check, and I can take that check and I can call a few people I know, and we can get together and we can buy this SJW property and convert it into something that we like and let them get a taste of their own medicine. That's my plan. That's my hope. Anyway, I'm going to tell you, pray for me because I'm praying for you. I thank you for indulging me as long as you have. Show's going to be with a new format now. No, I'm not going to do movies every week, although I may do a movie review every week, a short one. Um, whether I think you should see it or not. And I'll do longer reviews as content pieces, like I did with He-Man. But we're going to be doing a lot of new stuff, a lot of different stuff, and I hope that you'll be with me for this journey because I want to give you some entertainment, and all I want is, your friendship, however that comes. I know these are parasocial relationships, but knowing that you're out there makes me feel better. Anyway, pray for me. I'm praying for you, and let's say good night, America, and please Pastor Murray, take us out.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. I'll identify these people, who they are and what they're doing, because one of them gets a deadly wound. And the beast which I saw was likened to a leopard. That's one that changes spots. That's your Kenite. And his feet were as the feet of a bear. That'll take in Roosh. And his mouth is the mouth of a lion, his tearing. And the dragon, who? Satan himself, the old dragon, gave him his power and his seat. What again does this word seat mean? Throne. The dragon himself gives the one world government its throne. That means its power. You might wonder, many people would say, well, how could all these nations from Tahiti, from Bahrain to Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Yemen, how could all of them at the same time rise up? They got something in common, my friend. And we're talking about somebody that's going to give it a throne. Not just a seat, a throne. What happens then? Verse 3. And I saw one of the heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Who healed that wound? Well, read the next verse. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? The one world government, you can't make war with that. Why? There's no government to go against it. It consumes the world, but not God's elect. This is where you've got to understand, and this is why you've got to have strong faith, is to know as long as God is with you, who can be against you? Nobody. As long as you are armed with the sword of the Lord, the truth, and you understand what's happening in the world, God protects you. You and He make a majority, and you can count on that. You can believe it.